Here are 5 things that my mom has said to me. Number 1, we're moving to Saudi Arabia. Number 2, you're leaving your teaching job to become an animal trainer? Number 3, honey, if he's treating you that badly, you should definitely get divorced. Again. Number 4, you seriously think you can sit quietly for 10 days at a meditation retreat? You? And number 5, I've lost the use of my right side. My life of dancing in unfamiliar started when I was 8 years old, and my dad was offered a job managing a Marriott hotel in Saudi Arabia. Now, I was a kid, my family was going, so I went. I didn't have a choice. But my mom had a choice. She was a small-town girl from rural Ohio, and she agreed to go to a country where she couldn't drive, she wouldn't be able to have a job, she was going to be raising 2 children in a country with a very different culture, and she didn't speak the language, she didn't know anyone, and there was no alcohol. But she knew the value of putting yourself in unfamiliar situations. She and my dad had moved to Germany when he was in the army, and they learned such amazing things as they traveled through Europe that they wanted that for their children. And so despite protests from family and friends, we packed up and headed into the unknown. For 7 years, we lived in Saudi Arabia, we lived in Cairo, Egypt, and we lived in Athens, Greece. And then after I sowed my wild, rebellious oats a little too hard my freshman year in high school, they sent me to boarding school. And I say they sent me, but the Interlochen Arts Academy is an amazing school. I was thrilled to be there, but I was still 5,000 miles away from my family, who had been the only constant in all of the moving and all of the travel adventures. I was completely alone in a new setting. And here's where the brilliance of my parents' plan to take us overseas came in. Because I was so accustomed to being in unfamiliar places and meeting new friends, I was able to acclimate very quickly to my new school, and I had an amazing 3 years. Then I went to college, and I became a teacher of kids with special needs, and I got married. And I had this amazing dream of a house with the white picket fence and summers off, sipping iced tea, watching the kids play in the yard with the dog. But it didn't quite work out that way. After about 6 years, I walked out of the courtroom, having finalized my divorce, and headed off for a new life all by myself for the first time as an adult. I was in Tucson, again, 2,000 miles away from my family. But as I was moving into my new apartment, I realized I hadn't even thought twice about starting a life on my own. I mean, I had made friends with the children of royal Saudi Arabians in the pool where my dad worked at the hotel. I had figured out the public bus system and rode around Athens by myself as a 13-year-old. And I confused a very patient Egyptian street vendor when I mixed up the Arabic word for souvenir with the Arabic word for cabbage. But at least in Tucson, I knew the language. And I realized that by being in so many unfamiliar situations all my life, I was prepared for this situation that I didn't pick and I didn't necessarily want. And that's when I started intentionally seeking out unfamiliar experiences. Like in 1998, I was a few years into my teaching career, and I was comfortable with it. I knew the job. I was comfortable with the security of the job, but I wasn't happy. I was unfulfilled, and I felt like there was more that I could get out of my career, but I didn't know what it was. Now, that spring, we went on vacation, and we went to SeaWorld. And as I sat in the front row at the killer whale show, soaking wet from the finale jump, I was giddy because I realized that my childhood dream of working with animals was absolutely a possibility. So as soon as I got home, I started researching, what do I need to do to become an animal trainer? I started volunteering at the New England Aquarium. I would go in and scrub sea lion enclosures, and then I would thaw and weigh and cut up thousands of pounds of fish for them to eat, and then I'd go back and scrub some more sea lion enclosures. And I didn't know if this gamble would pay off, but I got to watch the trainers do their jobs. And I learned what they did to become a trainer. And within a year, I was officially hired as a trainer of seals and sea lions. Because I was willing to walk away from the comfort of my old job and move into the unfamiliar, I was rewarded with one of the most fun jobs that I've ever had. And so as I moved through life, I started realizing taking on unfamiliar experiences in a very intentional way was a great way to do that. Even though these days, as I get older, I'm starting to appreciate the value of comfort and familiarity. Like, it's awfully nice. But I still put myself in unfamiliar situations just so that I can maintain that muscle. And it is kind of a muscle, that discomfort muscle. It's actually a brain structure. So there's a part of your brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, and it does a lot of things, one of which is to develop your tenacity, your ability to push through uncomfortable, tough experiences that you might not want to do. And so by intentionally seeking out unfamiliar experiences, you strengthen that part of your brain so that you have the strength to get through life's next wrecking ball. So when I attempted to complete a 10-day fully silent meditation retreat, where I was supposed to sit still for 10 hours a day, clear my mind, and ignore the fact that my legs were falling asleep, I was strengthening my ability to bounce back. When my role was eliminated, I found myself without a job. When I intentionally went to Tanzania to see if I could make it to the top of Kilimanjaro, having never climbed a mountain, I was strengthening my ability to face the fact that I was in an emotionally and verbally abusive marriage and get out. And when I intentionally go to an unfamiliar grocery store and try, usually in vain, to find my favorite ice cream, I am strengthening my ability to deal with the perils of online dating. My experiences showed that when I move into those intentionally unfamiliar experiences, I'm strengthening my ability to be strong in those tough, unexpected life challenges. And it's not just my experience. This is brain science, okay? So imagine you're driving down the highway. You've got a long way to go. So you're cruising along, you got the radio blasting, and you're singing at the top of your lungs, "Don't stop, believe it," right? You're cruising along, you're having a good time, and suddenly you realize you have no idea where you are. So what's the first thing you do? You turn down the radio, right? It's a little weird, but here's what's happening. That's your brain saying, "Hey, yo, we need a little more power up here." Because when we're in an unfamiliar situation, we need to be able to focus more than usual. And so by eliminating that auditory input, we're giving our brain a little more capacity to deal with the new challenge, okay? But the problem is your brain is very lazy. It doesn't like to think that much. It likes the comfortable, easy situations where you know what to expect, where you know what you're going to do and how it's likely to turn out. Because your brain's job is to keep you alive. And unfamiliar situations to your brain could be dangerous. And so it wants to get you back to that nice comfort where you know what to expect and it's easy and comfortable. And so as you're riding around in life's challenges, your brain wants to rush to certainty. And that's a lot more comfortable based on the things you've experienced before. It's a lot more comfortable. But it can result in you missing some of the important details and important options. And it can have catastrophic results. Like in the hospital. If I went in for chest pain, okay? I want a doctor who is experienced. Agreed? I want a doctor who's seen it all, who's done it all, and who will move through fixing me with a confidence only gained by years of experience. At least that's what I thought I wanted until I read Dr. Carol Ann Moulton's research. What her research showed was that when hospitalized for a heart attack, patients with more experienced doctors experienced a higher death rate than patients of less experienced doctors. And they found the same thing in the financial field. Senior auditors tended to be worse than the average undergrad accounting student at finding unusual errors in financial records, like embezzlement. In medical, in finance, and beyond, years of experience often brings on a decline in accuracy. And it's not because experience isn't important. Experience is incredibly important. What happens is they're succumbing to their brain's desire to rush to certainty, and they're jumping to conclusions too fast. And so by intentionally seeking out unfamiliar experiences, we are honing our brain's ability to pause in that discomfort of not knowing and really focus on what's happening and really focus on the problem rather than focusing on our habits for solving that problem. And my mom's been doing this for years. And I don't know if she realized it, but when she was navigating the unfamiliar steps to starting a nonprofit to raise money for clean water projects around the world, she was equipping herself to rebuild her life after a stroke. I visited my courageous mother, she's an artist, in the hospital right after the stroke. And she couldn't walk unassisted. Her speech was so slurred that you could hardly understand what she was saying. Her right hand and arm were essentially disconnected from her brain. They were pretty much useless, and she was right-handed. She had no idea what the rest of her life was going to look like. I visited her again a few days later, and she showed me this pencil drawing that she had done and said, maybe I'll just be a left-handed artist. It showed her sense of humor. It showed her commentary on a very crappy situation. But most importantly, it showed her indomitable courage built on a life of seeking out and figuring out unfamiliar situations. Now, if you've already written off this idea because you didn't grow up riding public buses in a foreign country, or you have no desire to sit for 10 days silently in meditation, hang in there with me, because the small things matter too. Just order a different dish at dinner tonight, or take a different route to work. Those small, low-stakes uncertainties hone and strengthen your resilience in the unfamiliar so that when the big changes come with big uncertainties and big fear and big discomfort, you are ready to pause, to dance in the discomfort of not knowing, and then tenaciously persevere towards the best solution. Good luck.